Hi everyone. It's been a while since I did one of these, but I just had to share something related to last Sunday's sermon that was left on the desk. Last Sunday morning, with the snow falling outside and only a few of you in the room with me, we looked at a text from 2 Kings 13 that gave me a chance to make a side reference to the sometimes cute, but more often irritating, cultural phenomenon of kids, mainly kids, seeing the numbers 6 and 7 and saying 6, 7, and doing this with their hands. Now, if you aren't familiar with it, then I commend you for not spending very much time scrolling through social media, and I simultaneously chastise you for not spending enough time with young people. The phrase 6, 7 is a cultural rage, and at least as far as the investigative report that I read in the Wall Street Journal said, it's absolutely meaningless, but it is a thing. And I dare you to walk through an elementary or a middle school with a jersey that has the number 6, 7 on the back and just see how many comments you get. Now, on Sunday, what I did was I observed that Elisha was talking to the king of Israel, King Joash, who was afraid of the enemy Syrians. And Elisha goes through this little ritual with King Joash, an enacted oracle, the theologians call it. It's when a prophet does something to illustrate a message that he's trying to communicate. Well, first, Elisha tells King Joash to shoot an arrow out of his window toward the east. Just let it fly, because that's the same direction that the enemy Syrians would be coming from. But then Elisha tells King Joash to shoot more arrows at the ground. Strike the ground, he says. And King Joash shoots 3 arrows at the ground. And this is where I joked with the kids and I asked, okay, how many arrows does Elisha say that the king should have shot to the ground? 2 Kings 13, verse 19 says this: the man of God, that's Elisha, was angry with Joash and said, you should have struck 5 or 6 times. And this would have represented, this was Elisha's point, complete surrender of Israel's defense to the power of the Lord. You should have struck 5 or 6 times. And I said, I know the kids weren't rooting for Elisha to say 5 or 6. I know what they wanted was Elisha to say that he should have shot 6 or 7. And that was my not so subtle attempt at cultural relevance. And then we moved on in the sermon. But then one of my sons, after the service, who apparently wasn't able to think of anything else after this, he said, you know, Dad, if Elisha wanted Joash to shoot 5 or 6 arrows into the ground, representing complete surrender to the Lord, well, you know, he had already shot 1 out the window toward the east. So if you take that 1 and you add it to the 5 or 6 that are left, you know you get 6 or 7. Mind blown. Now, not to stretch this too far, but there is some symbolism in the Bible, like I told you, with the numbers 6 and 7. And a guy named Chris Dunnigan, who is actually a church ministry marketing specialist, he helped explains it really, really well. 6 is often associated with incompleteness. Not necessarily bad or sinful, but just not done. God worked 6 days, but creation wasn't fully completed until he rested on the 7th. There wasn't more work to do, but the 7th was the completion of everything. Same thing for humanity in its weekly rhythm of work and rest, like it tells us in the Mosaic Law. 6 is the number that represents the limits of human effort in the Bible, the limits of our achievement, what we can do in our own strength. Now, taken to its sinful and rebellious conclusion, this is our own effort attempting to compensate for the power and the effort of God. And taken to its logical conclusion, it means evil and represents the ultimate human imperfection. For example, remember the mark of the beast in Revelation 13. His number, of course, is 666. It's the symbol of ultimate human imperfection. A triple reminder, 666, that no matter how hard humanity tries in its own strength, we always fall short, rebelliously short. But then comes 7 in the Bible, which is the number of wholeness, holiness, and perfection. Now, this isn't a new observation. There's over 700 references to 7 in the Bible. For example, when Joshua defeated Jericho, God had him circle the city 7 times on the 7th day. And then God gave him victory and the walls came down. How much forgiveness did Jesus say that we should offer to others when they sin against us? 70 times 7. Try doing that in your own strength. Or check out Revelation again and the picture of God's power and the ultimate restoration of all things. 7 feasts, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 golden lampstands. 7's everywhere. It's pretty clear. And not really a stretch if we think about it. If 6 is what we do, 7 is what God completes. As Chris Dunnigan says, we're all 6s reaching for a 7. but it's only in Christ that we get there. Now, just to wrap this up, I wouldn't go so far as to say that God is orchestrating some grand internet viral trend as a way to share the gospel. Though go ahead and try it, right? Tell people that you'd be stuck at an eternal 6 unless Jesus made you a 7. See how that goes. But I do think that there's a general interpretive principle here at work. An interpretive principle of the world around us. We live in God's world, and so it shouldn't shock us to see patterns in that world that line up with universal truth. The Christian should be looking for them, not stretching things, not making things up, but observing them and pointing them out. Anyway, that's more than I knew on Sunday, more than I would have had time to share anyway. And so it was left on the desk.